super into business. We love seeing what's new, what's innovative, what's catching people's attention, what's going to change the world. We got a brand that sparked our interest, and I was just going to tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we want to start out every episode with a little shout out, a little sponsorship, maybe, a business that's intriguing us at the moment. And the business today is Super Coffee. We're not getting sponsored by them. We're not getting paid by them or by any means, but we want to shout them out because we think they have an excellent product. They have an excellent story, and their connections and stuff have aligned with, some of my connections, not necessarily in who I know, but in what I listen to. So I really, really like Barstool Sports. I follow them a lot, but I'm also very, very into business. So I listen to Erica Nardini's podcast, Token CEO, and she recently had these three brothers who are originally, I believe, from New York. The youngest of the three went to school in Philadelphia. Anyways, he created this brand called Super Coffee. It's low calories, low sugar, high in protein, what a lot of college athletes want, because he was a freshman basketball player. So they throughout the podcast, they talked about, the trials and tribulations that they've had so far with, their company. But yeah, it intrigued me. So I bought some off a Facebook ad. I thought it was a great idea. It tastes great. I'm putting in the plug right now.
That being said, what should we talk about today?
I saw a little bit of a Twitter feud between Elon Musk and founder, president Dave Portnoy about Bitcoin today. And I think it'd be very interesting if we talk about Bitcoin.
All right, I'm down. Let's talk about Bitcoin.
Let's talk about Bitcoin. Carter, do you know who created Bitcoin, or how did it come to be?
Yeah, it was created by a mysterious, unknown man who just basically disappeared off the face of the earth. I think his name was Satoshi Nakamoto.
Wait, did you say Tekashi 6ix9ine?
You a dummy, like a big dummy.
Why do people find Bitcoin valuable?
Bitcoin is valuable. One, security. So Bitcoin is one of the most secure technologies we have. Bitcoin has existed since 2009, and since then, not a single transaction has been fraudulent. Where in our banking system, about 7 to 8% of all financial transactions come out to be fraudulent.
How I got introduced to Bitcoin was through online gambling. I have recently stopped online gambling because I am a degenerate and have lost too much money. But through my Bovada account, I essentially needed to buy Bitcoin to transfer over to my Bovada account to essentially gamble. So that's how I got introduced to Bitcoin and kind of learned, more or less the ropes of what it is, what blockchain is, what a cryptocurrency is. And honestly, even though I've lost a little bit of money doing that, I've learned so much about Bitcoin. And personally, I'm going to invest a ton of money in Bitcoin over the long term because I think it is an extremely valuable resource and an extremely valuable currency for not just me, but for the entire world. And I believe Bitcoin is going to be financial gold in the future.
Yeah, and for me, getting out of college, being an economics major, and always having an interest in finance and personal finance, Bitcoin was an investment opportunity, and it's totally unique. Bitcoin is the first of many cryptocurrencies. It seems like there's a million of them now. Bitcoin, as time goes on, is going to become one of the more stable ones. We're seeing big companies start to put them on their balance sheets. It's becoming a legitimate investment for investors, especially retail investors. Crazy returns are what we're all shooting for, obviously. And Bitcoin, since its inception, has been the highest returning asset class in that time, and it's not even close, returning upwards of over 100,000%. It's just crazy.
And Bitcoin was made in 2009, so it's relatively a new way of trading money, or being able to obtain value in a certain thing. Cryptocurrencies are somewhat new because the digital age is somewhat new as well. So for my Bovada account, for example, I will buy let's say $50 worth of Bitcoin on Cash App, right? Cash App, you can buy it on Coinbase. There's a multitude of other ones. I don't know, BlockFi,
Voyager, Gemini, that the Winklevoss twins founded. There's
all-
tons of them out there.
So all of those are ways you can buy Bitcoin or other,
Other
cryptocurrencies. So I will buy $50 worth of Bitcoin. I exchange $50 from my, bank account in exchange for this address. It's like a bunch of just like letters and numbers. I copy that address, and wherever I want to send that to, I essentially paste that address, that cryptocurrency address of my Bitcoin, and my $50 gets sent there. Usually there's a little bit of a small fee,
Yep.
$1 or $2. That's what Cash App benefits
Yep.
from, trading that or
Transaction
having,
fees.
transaction fees, exactly. So you pay a little bit of a transaction fee, but I'm okay with that transaction fee because I believe Bitcoin, will go up over time, and, that small transaction fee, maybe it's $1 or $2, hopefully I'll get that in my return eventually, type of thing.
Yeah, and another cool thing about it is that it's fast and it's secure. I mean, as long as you're sending it to the right address and your account is secure, whether it's a digital wallet, whether it's through a crypto brokerage or whatever, the security really relies a lot upon you and how you use it. It's really not that hard,
I think you touched on it pretty good. It's extremely secure, and because you have these supercomputers essentially doing all this work to make it secure. But there are some cases, like I've heard in the news maybe like 3-4 months ago, that a gentleman had 2 tries left on, his
The password to his digital wallet. Yeah.
password to his digital wallet for like $200 million worth
Something
of
crazy.
Bitcoin. And that's ridiculous. But that security, obviously comes with its positives and negatives. You can't just call a bank up and be like, yo, what's my password? I forgot it. What's your mom's maiden name? Blah, 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 all that. You essentially have to remember it yourself. And if you forget, or it's buried deep in, some safe, in the Bahamas or something, you might not get that back, and that money is essentially lost forever,
And that's yeah, it's a big problem. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but there's a massive amount of Bitcoin, like millions of them. There's only 21 million in existence, and millions of them have been lost due to issues like this. A lot of them from some of the original Bitcoin owners in the early days, back when it wasn't really worth as much, so people took it more lightly, and can't blame them. As time goes on, like, one thing that's unique about Bitcoin is that, yeah, there only ever will be 21 million of them. So, people sometimes call it digital gold, whether that's a fair comparison or not.
Carter says, whether that's a fair comparison or not, like I didn't already just say that it was digital gold, throws me under the bus so hard.
It is finite, like gold or like other natural resources. So that is what gives it value to a lot of people.
Tesla has X amount of Bitcoin as some of their cash reserves. And I think that'll become even more prevalent as some of these bigger tech companies specifically, but even companies in general will start to use Bitcoin more as it becomes less volatile. Because if you're looking at Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis and just looking at its price, it fluctuates quite a bit. And that's volatility. So I think that's one of the knocks on Bitcoin right now with some of these big companies, why they would be skeptical of, going towards having Bitcoin as, their primary cash reserve. But, Elon Musk, he's kind of a once in a generation, once in a lifetime type of guy, and he's willing to take that risk. But it takes those type of people to kind of solidify Bitcoin as, a currency that you're going to use as that cash reserve. And the more and more companies use it, the less volatile it'll be in the long term.
When companies like that, when guys like Elon Musk jump on, it builds trust within the retail and investor community, builds trust even within like the corporate community. And as time goes on and more companies jump on, hopefully you'll get companies like Apple or Google or Facebook with just like these monster balance sheets with tons of cash on hand. And all that cash might present an issue because the value of the dollar is only decreasing as time goes on, 2 to 3% a year. And after 2020, we had 30% of all currency printed since the pandemic began. And there's a lot of concerns over inflation, and putting that money into an asset like Bitcoin is really attractive, even if it's just part of their balance sheet. So, you get companies like Apple that got over $100 billion on their balance sheet. You know, what if they just put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin, just like Tesla did? You know,
Exactly.
If they're returning 200% a year on average, what's that going to do to Apple's balance sheet? What if they put 50 billion into Bitcoin? And then when these big companies start putting Bitcoin on their balance sheets, it's going to create a little bit of stability. As these investors jump in, they're not going to be as willing to sell as a retail investor that loses their mind and has have weak stomachs when it takes a hit. And you know, it will take a hit. Bitcoin's been extremely volatile, and it's inevitable.
Bitcoin is valued by people. We create the value, or we put the value on Bitcoin. Because it's trading at $50,000 or $60,000, that's because of supply and demand. If more people demand it, you know, Bitcoin is going to be, you know, going up and up and up. As more companies start to use it, it's going to go up. But if people are skeptical and, you know, potentially if people are afraid of it,
lose that trust,
it'll lose value. So I think, and I think Carter would think this as well, is you might see some dips, you know, over the next couple of years as Bitcoin ages and as people trust Bitcoin more. We're going to see it really, really shoot up, you know, in the next 10 to 20 years. And, you know, personally, I think it's always a good idea to have, you know, maybe 5-10% in Bitcoin instead of just having it in cash. Because like Carter said earlier, cash dollars, the US dollar, has decreased in value year over year about 2 to 3%. And especially with the government pumping money because of COVID, it's going to create, you know, inflation problems, and our dollar is essentially going to lose even more value. I'm not saying that it was necessarily a wrong move to pump money into our system and help people out and, you know, the stimulus checks and stuff like that, but the dollar will lose value. You're creating worthless money to a bunch of people. So if you have Bitcoin, which has a finite amount, the government can't put more into it, you know, that's going to grow in value over time.
Yeah. You know, and government actions might end up affecting the value of Bitcoin, because right now, the world has easy access to capital. Interest rates are as low as they've ever been, near zero. And with all the money printing, interest rates are one of the things keeping inflation rates low. Things like oil prices being low, but that's not sustainable. Interest rates eventually might have to go up, you know, even no matter what the Fed has said. As interest rates go up, people's access to capital will go down, and there'll be a bigger barrier towards it, and maybe there might not be as much free cash flow that could go into Bitcoin.
With Biden's recent tax hike, Bitcoin decreased in value about $12,000 just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it has since recovered a bit, as, you know, I feel like people maybe over dramatize, you know, this tax increase, but I believe he introduced like a 40% tax.
Capital gains tax.
Capital gains, right?
Rumored increases on capital gains taxes. Yep.
So obviously, like, you know, what our president does, or, you know, what our government does will have effect on Bitcoin. Over the long term, you'll probably see that, you know, those type of people or the government affect it less and less.
Yeah, just like the stock market, news affect the short term, but performance and fundamentals are what control the long-term price. And before I forget, another interesting perspective that supports like long-term stability of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency altogether have become this massive ecosystem. I mean, Bitcoin is becoming such a large part of some companies, and it's creating some companies. It's we have massive public companies who have these huge focuses on Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. You got publicly traded stocks like Riot Blockchain or Mara that are Bitcoin mining companies that focus all of their attention on mining Bitcoin and racing to that last coin. And then you got the chip makers like NVIDIA, who creates the graphics cards, AMD and Intel and their GPUs that power the Bitcoin mining. And that's really become an issue because of the chip shortage, which has made it hard for them to produce enough systems for the Bitcoin miners. And that even goes down to another level. All the chip makers like Xilinx, which is now owned by AMD, or Texas Instruments.
I feel like what you said may have gone over a few people's heads. So let's kind of digest. One, how can you get a Bitcoin?
Every time there's a transaction made it needs to be verified on the blockchain. So the blockchain is a peer-to-peer network. If I want to purchase Bitcoin from Isaac, I do that over whatever platform, and that transaction has to be verified by one of these supercomputers. And the supercomputers process this transaction by solving complex algorithms or problems, and they keep getting more and more complex as time goes on and harder to compute. So that's why the need for better computing power keeps going up and up. So these massive supercomputers that are processing these transactions are stuffed in these big warehouses with millions of dollars of capital funneled into them to make them work. They take up massive amounts of energy, which could potentially be an issue when it comes to the environment. Yeah, so every transaction has to be verified, and when a transaction is successfully verified, that computer, that network is rewarded in Bitcoin. So that's what those companies are going for. They're competing for Bitcoin, and the computers that can solve the algorithm for that transaction first are the ones who get rewarded. So that's why a MacBook Pro can't compete against some supercomputer in Iceland. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a peer-to-peer transaction, but every single transaction is public. That is public information and stuff like that. So anyone can access that information, and each transaction that you have is a link on the blockchain.
It's a block, yeah.
It's a little block. So you add a bunch of these blocks up, and they become stronger and stronger and stronger, which makes it harder and harder to hack.
It's transparent. There's a timestamp created that everyone can see, or that the computers can see, and so the reason why it's so hard to hack is because you can hack one block on the chain, but it's impossible to hack every single block on the chain.
What would you say some of the financial implications of Bitcoin are?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implications that are some relatively predictable and some that we won't predict, but for the investor, Bitcoin's very attractive. It's going to be very volatile, so you're going to see a lot of people hurt by it. You're going to see a lot of people gain from it. In my opinion, people that are long on Bitcoin are going to gain the most if you're able to stomach the ups and downs. That's where you're going to be rewarded the most. But Bitcoin also is going to promote advances in innovation in computing, which we've already seen, which will just funnel down into every single sector of the economy, because every single sector of the economy is needing computing power more and more. You'll also see cryptocurrencies start to compete with other business platforms like Ethereum and their smart contracts, for example, could compete with companies like Amazon and Amazon Web Services to house business platforms. Another big implication is the international implications, because Bitcoin's a worldwide phenomena. It could be something that links us all together, something that unites us, and as people start to understand more and more, and it becomes part of our conversations more, it will continue to build that trust, and popularity will flourish as it has been. But again, it'll be in cycles, just like anything else in the financial world. It's exciting to see who will be the winners, who will be the losers among all the cryptocurrencies.
It's crazy to think like, okay, where could this go? And as more and more things go virtual, I can expect nothing less but Bitcoin be like a very a big staple in our age.
It's changing the world, and it's just going to keep overflowing into other sectors. It's going to create new ideas, just like any other big idea. There's innovation to come, and Bitcoin offers a totally different world of innovation that's just voodoo to us at this point. Like NFTs, I don't know anything about NFTs other than that it utilizes the blockchain as well, but it's crazy, and some of the valuations just seem so hiked up. But as time goes on, we'll start to understand more, and as things play out, we'll decide what really matters to us, what actually creates value for us. And there's so many things to learn, and that's what we're here to help you with. And we got a lot to learn ourselves. So if you guys got anything you want us to talk about going forward, anything you want us to learn about to try to help you, definitely leave something down in the comments. Leave the video a like, subscribe. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Let's go.